Youth climate activists and civil society groups will tomorrow be marching to Parliament. The march, under the banner of hashtag March for System Change, is aimed at addressing the country's climate and socio-economic crises. The event is part of the global climate strike initiative that's taking place all over the world this week. Gabriel Klaasen, youth coordinator and programs manager at the African Climate Alliance, joins us now for more on this program. Gabriel, good afternoon. Welcome to Today on eNCA. Thank you very much for your time. I was just fascinated by why you guys chose Heritage Day tomorrow to do this instead of an occasion that's maybe linking closer to environmental issues or climate change issues. What was the rationale?
Firstly, thank you for having me. It's a deep pleasure to be here again. I think a big decision maker was more three things. One, South Africa is broad in its heritage, in its culture, in its natural and kind of social kind of heritage. And so one thing that we want to acknowledge is the fact that if we don't take action to save our future, a lot of that heritage will be lost. Another thing was to look at the fact that so many students can't mobilize, or so many people rather can't mobilize on a Friday, for example, when everyone else, we heard Fridays for Future. In South Africa, we can't afford to pull students out of school. And a lot of students also have religious days to observe on a Friday. And so the reason that we're doing it on a Saturday and Heritage Day worked out so perfectly is to make sure that everyone is accommodated to join, to call for the world that we want. And then the third reason that we decided Heritage Day was very specific because it's not just about the environment. It's about people and it's about our planet. It's about our economy and the social injustices and social struggles that we face as well. We don't wish for this to be something that's just a climate action, but rather a social and economic one as well. This is something that we need to acknowledge, is that climate change is linked to everything, but we can't assume people will be willing to mobilize with us if we talk just about the plants and just about the environment, but rather showing them how the priorities that face them, the issues that they face on their day-to-day lives are in fact linked to a broader issue, that broader issue being the systemic injustice that we face in this country and across the world. Okay. And so hence the banner, March for System Change.
Okay, I want to unpack that March for System Change shortly, but I understand from your press release earlier that tomorrow's march will be a culmination of a week-long event under the Cape Town Climate Week, which began on the 19th. So very briefly, what's going to happen tomorrow? You're marching to Parliament. What's going to happen?
Yes, so tomorrow we're marching to Parliament. We're meeting at Hanover Street at 10:30, and we're making our way through Roland and gathering at Parliament, where voices will be heard, young people and old, and everywhere in between will be heard, their struggles, their issues heard, and kind of vocalized, not only on the stage or as we march, but in fact as we hand over demands to our leaders, demands that look at establishing a joint parliamentary standing committee on climate and ecological crisis, to reforming our education system, to stopping fossil fuel investment and more. And so really that's what we're looking to do tomorrow, is not only have it be a visual representation or a vocal representation, but something that actually puts something concrete forward. We want change to come out of tomorrow. We want things more than just we acknowledge the fact that you've done it, but rather for those representatives and those leaders that we have invited to receive the memorandums to actively take it forward. We've for too long, for the last 28 years, heard promises of a future, but it's time that action is actually formed.
Okay, you say this event is aligned with a global climate strike, but your hashtag for tomorrow is not hashtag March for Climate Change. It's hashtag March for System Change. Why that change in terms of emphasis?
So the reason that we really wanted to emphasize the system change aspect, and we've been doing it, I think, as South Africa subconsciously for many years, but we chose it specifically because we acknowledge the fact that we can't just march for planet or for the environment. So we're marching for a planet which sustains us, for people and justice for people who suffer the most, and for future generations threatened by these crises, not only the environmental crises or the climate crisis, but for the social and economic issues that they face as well. And so a big thing that we've acknowledged, and I think as people living in South Africa, we know this, is that it's never just one thing. it's always more. And I think it's quite beautiful that we're looking at it as system change, as a need for us to go deeper than just the top layer complaints of what's going wrong, but find out the root of our issue and try to pull it out from there. I think last year we saw hashtag uproot the system was one of the trends. This year, we're wanting to continue rather than just go back into what the rest of the world is doing, but rather focus on what South Africa needs and what South Africa wants. And I think that's really genuinely needed is system change. We can't go another 3 decades of issue. We need change now, and systemic change is where it's at.
So you want to create awareness with this hashtag March for System Change, but socio-economic issues beyond the climate crisis. You want to be focusing on issues that are challenging everybody, like, for example, food access for all, water access for all, and housing, not just, so it's around economic and social systems. That's what you want to highlight tomorrow.
Exactly.
Who's taking part?
So, in fact, we've got so many people taking part. We've had deep conversations with the city of Cape Town as well, and they've said that they will send a representative forward and that they are in support of the mobilization. But deeper than that, and more importantly, at least to my opinion, people taking part are young people, old people, and everyone in between, all across civil society. We've had support from certain unions as well, who have vocalized their support to us and what we're doing across not only in Cape Town, but across South Africa. And so tomorrow, basically, it's everyone and anyone who has an issue and wants to have it heard and vocalized as it relates to the greater good of us all. It's everyone. It's not just us shipping people to Cape Town. I think that's something that we need to break that rhetoric. It's not us shipping people to Cape Town, but rather helping people who want to be there have their voice heard and activated. And so I really think that that's going to be something that we see tomorrow, is people suffering from food insecurity and water insecurity. And we know that that's a big issue right now, not only here in Western Cape, but also now in Eastern Cape as the drought starts up a lot more and a lot stronger there. We start pushing for energy justice, because right now we all know a load shedding crisis. I'm right now on my hotspot because of load shedding. And so I think a big thing is that we're trying to find a middle ground for everyone to come together and begin reimagining a future that is for us, future defined by us and for us, and one that we can achieve.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, tomorrow will be a culmination of a week-long event. And your week, I don't know how it's gone, if you can summarize how it's been so far. And I also see that, I think it was on Tuesday, you were focusing on public transport, which is essential for the working class.
Yeah, so I think a big reason that we wanted to do the hashtag Cape Town Climate Week. That's where you can find a lot of the things that happened this week. We did different things throughout the week: food gardening for system change, transport and transforming transport, food forests, art for climate justice, and then today, of course, global climate strike in solidarity with the rest of the world. But a reason that we focused on these different areas and with key partners was because we needed to build awareness. You can't expect people to care about what you're doing if you don't show how it's related to what you're doing and how what they're doing is actually part of the greater good. For example, on Tuesday, we came together in Woolly Point, in Greenpoint, with a blue train, actually. It was a bit of a jest in a sense, but it was actually really fun because it was actually the only working train that was always on time, ran as it should, and because public transport plays such a crucial role, not only for our economy here in Cape Town, but for the social aspects and the environmental. The less cars on the road, the more people taking public transport, the more people taking trains, the less global emissions go out. You know, we don't have these carbon emissions pushed out, greenhouse gases pushed out as much, rather, shall I say, because obviously it's nothing perfect. But public transport plays a crucial role, getting us to work, getting us to school, so that we can earn a living, so that we can move through our day-to-day lives. I mean, I can pay a taxi, or I can pay for 2 returns for a train, and that's a serious thing to look at.
Yeah. Okay. No, thanks for sharing with us some of the highlights of the past week. And tomorrow, of course, is your big march for system change, starting at about 10 o'clock, 10:30, from Hanover Street in Cape Town, and you're going to go via Rowland Street, making your way to Parliament. I'm sure we'll touch base with you, hopefully next week, to see how it went, if you thought it was successful, and if you've achieved your goals. Thank you very much, Gabriel Klaasen. He's, of course, Youth Coordinator and Programs Manager at African Climate Alliance.